Lads, excellent, and I mean excellent news for the Indiana Fever.
It looks like we got some interesting news. CaitlinClark was back at practice today.
I think CaitlinClark in practice clothes right there kind of provided some folks with some hope. It's like, okay. Maybe she's about to come back, right?
The WNBA have said her estimated return date is the 12th of August. I think that's probably a fair estimate.
Is she closer to a return than we think?
Hold on to your seats, because the news we've all been waiting for has finally arrived, and it's better than anyone could have imagined. CaitlinClark is back at IndianaFever practice, and she's not just participating, she's looking absolutely incredible out there. We're talking full workout gear, moving at what appears to be close to full speed, and participating in drills like she never left the court in the first place. The footage that dropped earlier today has sent Fever fans into complete euphoria. Because this isn't just any practice appearance. This is CaitlinClark looking like she's ready to dominate the WNBA once again. After weeks of uncertainty, medical evaluations, and everyone holding their breath about her groin injury, Clark stepped onto that practice court wearing shorts and looking like the superstar we all know and love.
She was there at practice as the Indiana Fever gear up to beat the gum on the bottom of the shoe Chicago Sky tomorrow. I plan on beating them by 30.
CaitlinClark is in gear. She is in gear at practice. Lads, that is super duper important. That is a big sign when it comes to CaitlinClark. So she's at 3.5 weeks for what is an injury that you can probably come back from after a week. Like a not even groin strain, like a 0 grade, like a grade 0 groin strain, a little bit of pain in my groin. Like that is an injury you can come back from after a week. That's an injury you can play on.
She's moving, shooting, and engaging with her teammates has basketball analysts saying this might be the most encouraging injury return footage they've ever seen from a professional athlete. If you're as pumped as we are about Clark's incredible comeback, comment "Clark's back," and let's dive into why this practice footage changes absolutely everything for the Indiana Fever's championship aspirations. This isn't just about a player returning from injury. This is about witnessing what could be the beginning of the most dominant second half of a WNBA season in recent memory. The timing couldn't be more perfect either, with the Fever sitting at 13-12 and desperately needing their superstar to make a serious playoff push.
As long as the Indiana Fever can thread water up until the 10th of August, they're fine. They're absolutely fine. Like the Indiana Fever are 13-12 right now. To make the playoffs, you probably need to be... You need 20... I would say 20 wins gets you into the playoffs. There's 8 teams in a 13-team league. 20 and 24 should statistically get you into the playoffs.
In about 2 weeks, they'll be around 10 games out of a playoff run, and there's speculation that maybe she's going to take the time off, take a look at where the team is at for the playoffs, maybe in a week or two, and then make a determination. I mean, look, if something happens, and I mean, God forbid, they lose 8 in a row and they're out of it. They're gone. Playoff hopes dashed, right? If that was to happen, then there ain't no point of her coming back.
So I would say she's going to ramp up and play a bit of 5v5 by maybe the 1st of August. And then it's going to be probably maybe another week. So they then play on Sunday against the Storm. I don't think she plays that one. They play Tuesday the 6th against the Sparks. It's an away game at 10 p.m. Eastern time. I don't see her playing that. I don't see her playing an away at 10 p.m. Eastern time game against the Mercury. I think her first game back is probably going to be either the 9th of August against the Sky or the 12th of August against the Wings. That would be my prediction. So, like, what's that? That's 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today.
Let's stop playing games, Stephanie White. I hope you're not going to try to use these late season additions, the Ari McDonald's, the Chloe Bibbies, CaitlinClark's injury. I hope you're not going to try to use this as an excuse for you not to make the playoffs. You need to make the playoffs, period. I don't want to hear none of these excuses.
But based on what we're seeing from practice, Clark isn't just coming back to play. She's coming back to absolutely take over the entire league and remind everyone why she's the most electrifying player in basketball. The energy around this practice footage is unlike anything we've seen all season, and for good reason, because this could be the moment that changes everything for Indiana's championship dreams. Let's be completely honest about how terrifying this injury situation had become for CaitlinClark and everyone who loves watching her play basketball. We're talking about a player who had literally never missed a game due to injury in her entire basketball career. Not in 4 years at Iowa, and not during her incredible rookie WNBA season. Suddenly dealing with multiple setbacks that had fans genuinely worried about her long-term health.
181, that's a lot of games, no injuries. Then, she missed some preseason games with what was announced as left leg tightness. Then she missed 5 regular season games with what was announced as left quad strain. Then she missed 5 more regular season games with what was announced as left groin. Now she has missed the last 2 games, regular season games, along with the 3-point shootout in the All-Star game in her house, Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, where she was reduced to being, of course, a coach/cheerleader. She's missed all that with what was announced as a right groin.
The groin injury saga started as what seemed like a minor issue, but quickly spiraled into something much more concerning when Clark kept having setbacks and rain juries that forced her to miss crucial games. This wasn't just any regular season stretch either. Clark missed a WNBA All-Star game where she was the leading vote-getter from fans, which tells you everything about how serious the medical staff was taking this situation. The fact that she underwent multiple medical evaluations, and the team kept saying there was no timetable for her return, had people genuinely wondering if we were looking at a career-ending situation. Remember, Clark has dealt with a left quad injury earlier this season, then a left groin injury, and most recently, this right groin strain that's kept her out for weeks. For a player whose entire game is built on explosive movements, cutting, and the kind of dynamic athleticism that makes her impossible to guard, any groin injury is absolutely terrifying.
The Fever actually, as you probably know, won the Commissioner's Cup championship game without CaitlinClark. So the leading vote getter in the All-Star game is, cold hard truth, having a terrible season so far. In fact, it has been so bad that sometimes I've wondered if maybe she took a few games off just to give herself a much-needed mental break.
Yeah, I think when the injury happened, it was pretty frustrating considering I knew what the coming days were going to hold for myself. But I feel like dealing with that and then also just trying to look at it in the most positive manner that I can and being a part of this, and that wasn't going to be taken away from me.
Do I think CaitlinClark should take it as handy as possible? Of course. Take it as handy as possible, go as slow as possible, go at whatever speed you feel comfortable at, Caitlin. Take as much time as you need. Take more time than you need.
The medical evaluations that confirmed no additional injuries or damage were obviously encouraging, but the fact that they needed to do those evaluations in the first place shows how concerning the situation had become. Indiana's medical team was clearly being extremely cautious, prioritizing Clark's long-term health over any short-term gains, which was absolutely the right approach, but made every day feel like an eternity for fans desperate to see their superstar back on the court. The psychological aspect can't be ignored either, because Clark had to be dealing with frustration about missing so much time after never dealing with anything like this before in her career. You could see the emotion when she got hurt against Connecticut, covering her head with a towel on the bench, knowing this was another setback when she was just getting back into rhythm. The uncertainty around her return timeline had created this cloud over the entire Fever season, with every update being analyzed and dissected by fans hoping for any positive news about their franchise player.
I've gone back and watched the play on which she, according to the team, pulled her right groin. That came with 39 seconds left against Connecticut up in the Boston Celtics house. And the play just looks so routine to my eyes. There's no awkward slip or fall. She makes a sweet little feed to Kelsey Mitchell, breaking free down the baseline for a layup. No doubt Caitlin's the best passer in the W. But as she turns to trot back up court, she grabs her right groin. Then she goes and lightly bangs her head against the far stanchion in frustration. Then she goes to the bench and covers her head with a towel in abject frustration.
I mean, I'm not going to say I've just been getting around the clock treatment. I've been still trying to enjoy this weekend and having a balance of that at the same time and soaking all of this in. And, once tomorrow comes around, we'll completely shift my focus to getting as healthy as possible. And,
licking our wounds from the loose.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, just prioritizing that.
But all I know for sure about the WNBA is that it had better get Caitlin Clark physically and mentally healthy or risk sliding right back off the national map.
But now we get to the absolutely incredible part that has everyone losing their minds with excitement about what they're seeing from practice today. The footage shows Caitlin Clark not just participating in practice, but looking like she's moving with a kind of fluidity and confidence that suggests she's feeling completely healthy and ready to get back to dominating opposing defenses. We're talking about Clark in full workout gear, wearing shorts instead of the street clothes we've gotten used to seeing her in on the sidelines, which is always the first major sign that a player is making serious progress in their recovery process. The way she's moving during drills shows no hesitation or caution in her movements, which is exactly what you want to see from a player coming back from groin injuries. That can often leave athletes tentative about making explosive cuts and changes of direction. Her shooting form looks absolutely pristine, with that same effortless release and confidence that made her the most feared three-point shooter in basketball, showing that the time off hasn't affected her muscle memory or shooting mechanics at all. The interaction with her teammates shows a player who's mentally ready to get back into the competitive environment, laughing and communicating like someone who knows they're close to returning to where they belong. Coach Stephanie White's comments about Clark being able to do more in practice while monitoring her progress day by day suggest the medical staff is following a smart, progressive approach to her return. The fact that this was described as her first time back in live action since the injury means we're potentially looking at a player who's passed the biggest hurdle in her recovery process. You can see in the footage that Clark isn't favoring either leg or showing any signs of discomfort, which would be immediately obvious given how closely everyone is watching her every movement. The energy and enthusiasm she's showing during these drills suggests a player who's been dying to get back out there and is finally getting the green light to ramp up her activity level. This practice footage represents hope for Fever fans who have been watching their team struggle without their best player, while knowing that everything changes the moment Clark steps back onto the court healthy and ready to take over games. What makes this comeback story even more impressive is understanding the meticulous approach Clark and the medical team have taken to ensure she comes back stronger than ever. The decision to have Clark see her own medical team in addition to the Fever staff shows a player who's taking every precaution to make sure this injury doesn't become a recurring problem throughout her career. That level of diligence and attention to detail suggests someone who understands the bigger picture and isn't willing to risk long-term health for short-term gains, which is exactly the kind of mature approach you want from a franchise cornerstone. The rehabilitation process has clearly involved not just physical therapy and treatment, but also mental preparation for returning to the high-intensity environment of professional basketball after dealing with multiple setbacks. Clark's own comments about not being a fan of minutes restrictions shows a competitor who wants to come back at full strength rather than easing back into action, which aligns perfectly with what we're seeing from practice footage. The fact that she's been working with multiple medical professionals and taking extra time to ensure complete healing shows the kind of professional approach that extends careers rather than shortening them. You have to appreciate how the Fever organization has handled this situation, resisting any pressure to rush their star player back, and instead focusing on what's best for Clark's long-term health and effectiveness. The communication between Clark, her personal medical team, and the Fever staff represents the kind of collaborative approach that gives everyone confidence this return will be sustainable rather than another false start. What's particularly encouraging is hearing that Clark has been doing everything possible to maintain her conditioning and basketball skills while managing the injury recovery, which explains why she looks so sharp in these practice videos. The timeline of her recovery, while frustrating for fans, actually suggests a thorough and professional approach that prioritizes getting this right rather than getting this done quickly. Clark's history as someone who takes care of her body and approaches basketball with incredible professionalism gives you confidence that she's followed every recommendation and protocol to ensure this comeback is legitimate. The fact that multiple medical evaluations confirm no additional damage or underlying issues means we're looking at a player who should be able to return to her previous level without any long-term concerns about this injury affecting her performance. While Clark has been working on her recovery, her teammates have been showing exactly why this Fever team is going to be absolutely dangerous when their superstar returns to full health. The team's 13-12 record without Clark for significant stretches proves this roster has championship-level depth and the kind of collective talent that can compete with anyone in the league. Sophie Cunningham has emerged as a legitimate sixth player of the year candidate, shooting an absolutely ridiculous 58% from three over her last 6 games while averaging over 13 points per game and providing the kind of defensive toughness that championship teams need. Kelsey Mitchell has shown she can step up as a primary scorer when needed, most recently dropping 21 points in that statement victory over the Las Vegas Aces that proved this team can beat elite competition even without their best player. Natasha Howard has been providing the kind of veteran leadership and consistent production that allows younger players to develop confidence, while Aaliyah Boston continues to establish herself as one of the premier young bigs in the entire league. The fact that Indiana has managed to stay competitive and even win crucial games without Clark shows this isn't a one-woman show, but rather a deep, talented roster that's going to be incredibly difficult to stop when everyone is healthy. Coach Stephanie White has done an excellent job managing rotations and keeping everyone engaged despite the uncertainty around Clark's return timeline, creating the kind of team chemistry that often translates to playoff success. The emergence of players like Ari McDonald, who has provided valuable minutes and clutch performances, shows this roster has the kind of unexpected contributors that championship teams always seem to discover. What's most encouraging is seeing how much this team has improved defensively during Clark's absence, suggesting that her return will elevate an already solid defensive unit rather than trying to carry a team that struggles on that end of the court. The way different players have stepped up in different games shows a roster with multiple weapons and the kind of versatility that creates matchup problems for opposing teams throughout a playoff series. This collective improvement during Clark's absence means her return won't just restore the team to its previous level, but potentially elevate them to heights we haven't seen yet this season, because of the growth and confidence other players have gained. Now, let's talk about what everyone really wants to know, which is when we can realistically expect to see CaitlinClark back on the court terrorizing opposing defenses with her incredible skill and competitiveness. Based on the practice footage and the positive reports about her participation in team activities, we're looking at a return timeline that could be much sooner than anyone expected just a few days ago. The Fever's upcoming schedule creates some interesting possibilities, with games against teams they should be able to handle, even if Clark needs to shake off some rust in her first game back from this extended absence. Looking at the calendar, the August 9th game against Chicago or the August 12th matchup against Dallas seem like realistic targets for Clark's return, giving her enough time to progress through full practice participation while not rushing back too quickly. The fact that she's already participating in live action during practice suggests the medical staff is comfortable with her progress and may be closer to clearing her for game action than their conservative public statements suggest. What's particularly encouraging is hearing that Clark prefers not to have minutes restrictions when she returns, which suggests she's feeling confident about her health and ready to resume her normal workload rather than easing back into action. The timing could actually work out perfectly for the Fever's playoff push, as Clark's return would coincide with a crucial stretch of games where every victory becomes increasingly important for seeding and momentum. From a strategic standpoint, having Clark return against weaker opponents gives her a chance to find her rhythm before facing elite teams in games that could determine playoff positioning and home court advantage. The fact that this practice participation represents her first live action since the injury means we're potentially looking at a very short timeline between full practice participation and actual game readiness. Indiana's medical staff has been extremely cautious throughout this process, so seeing them allow Clark to participate in contact drills suggests they're confident the injury risk has been minimized significantly. The progressive approach they've taken, monitoring her response to increased activity levels day by day, creates confidence that when she does return, it will be sustainable rather than another false start that leads to additional setbacks. Coach White's comments about evaluating her progress and looking for any signs of regression show a medical team that's being smart about this process, while also recognizing that Clark is eager to get back to doing what she does best. The addition of Chloe BBY on a 7-day contract might seem like a minor roster move, but it actually represents the kind of depth building that shows this organization is thinking about maximizing their championship window when Clark returns to full health. BBY brings international experience and the ability to stretch the floor from the forward position, which could provide valuable spacing and versatility when Clark is creating for herself and her teammates. The fact that Indiana is still making moves to improve their roster despite Clark's injury shows a front office that believes this team can make serious noise in the playoffs when everyone is healthy and available. What's particularly interesting about BBY's addition is how it could affect rotations and matchups, potentially giving White more flexibility to deploy different lineup combinations depending on what opposing teams try to do defensively against Clark. The depth this roster now has at multiple positions means Clark won't have to carry an unrealistic offensive burden when she returns, which should help manage her workload and keep her fresh for the most important games of the season. You can see how the chemistry between Clark and her teammates has remained strong despite her absence, with players like Sophie Cunningham joking around with her on social media and maintaining the kind of relationships that translate to on-court success. The fact that McDonald and other newer players have had time to establish their roles without Clark means her return will enhance an already functioning system rather than disrupting team chemistry that's been building. This roster construction shows a team that was built to withstand injuries and maintain competitiveness, which explains why they've been able to stay in playoff contention despite missing their best player for extended periods. The combination of veteran leadership, emerging young talent, and role players who understand their specific contributions creates the kind of roster depth that championship teams need when facing the inevitable challenges of a long season and playoff run. When Clark returns to this group, we're looking at a team that has the talent, depth, and chemistry to make serious noise in the playoffs and potentially challenge for a championship if everything clicks at the right time. The championship implications of Clark's return cannot be overstated, because we're potentially looking at a player who's had weeks to rest, recover, and watch film while her teammates have been building confidence and establishing their roles within the team structure. The Fever's current playoff positioning puts them in a perfect spot to make a serious run if Clark returns healthy and at full strength, especially considering how much trouble they've given elite teams even without their best player available. What makes this situation particularly exciting is the possibility that Clark comes back with even more motivation and intensity after watching her team compete at a high level without her, potentially creating the kind of chip on her shoulder that drives championship-level performances. The timing of her return could coincide perfectly with the most important stretch of the season, when teams are making their final push for playoff seeding and establishing momentum heading into the postseason tournament. Looking at the current standings and remaining schedule, the Fever are positioned to potentially secure a favorable playoff matchup if they can string together wins with Clark back in the lineup, creating chaos for opposing to face a completely different animal when she's back and looking to prove that her absence didn't diminish her status as one of the most dominant players in basketball. The combination of Clark's individual brilliance and the team's improved depth and chemistry during her absence creates the possibility of a second-half surge that could propel Indiana into serious championship contention. What's particularly encouraging is seeing how much other players have grown during Clark's absence, suggesting that her return will elevate an already improved team rather than having to carry players who haven't developed their own confidence and skills. The fact that Indiana has managed to beat quality opponents like Las Vegas without Clark shows this team has the kind of collective talent and mental toughness that championship teams need when facing adversity in the playoffs. When you combine Clark's individual brilliance with this team's proven depth and resilience, you're looking at a roster that could potentially make the kind of unexpected championship run that defines legendary seasons and creates lasting legacies for everyone involved in the organization.